Jiu-Jitsu for Law Enforcement, How Grappling Techniques Can Save Lives. Jason Swartz, Jiu-Jitsu 5.0. In this episode, I welcome Jason Swartz to discuss the relevance of Jiu-Jitsu training for law enforcement officers. We delve into the limitations of traditional police defensive tactics and the importance of grappling techniques in controlling resisting individuals safely. Jason is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and former police officer of 11 years. During his career, he was assigned as a lead combative tactics instructor, firearms instructor, and field training officer. He is the recipient of 3 life-saving awards and multiple department commendations and unit citations. He is also a former amateur boxer and certified USA boxing coach. He currently trains and teaches Jiu-Jitsu full-time. We also address misconceptions about the effectiveness of strikes and emphasize the need for consistent training and fundamental techniques. Our conversation also touches on the behavior of individuals in high-stress situations, recent incidents of excessive force by police officers, and the importance of training for children, and Jason's company, Jiu-Jitsu 5.0. We conclude by discussing the role of Jiu-Jitsu in police officer education and the challenges of finding time for training. And to our listeners, remember to stay tuned for more inspiring conversations coming up on the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. You can find Jason at jiu-jitsu50.com. Links are there below in the show notes, and on Insta at jiu-jitsu50. Again, check the links below. Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator, subject matter expert from hownotodie.com.au. And you're listening to my Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast, sponsored by these guys, mystate.com, the ultimate daily formula for optimum hormone health, stress management, energy, and performance. 100% natural and clinically proven ingredients. It provides everything you need to raise your game in a convenient, gut-friendly capsule. Links for my former shows are in the show notes below. Thanks for watching. And we're live. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Welcome to my guest, Jason Swartz, Jiu-Jitsu 5.0. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the patience and setting this up. I know you're super busy, and I love what you do. You know, I found you on Instagram, and I'm really talking for the listeners because I'll do the intro prior to this, record it, intro with all the show notes. But you know what you put out on socials there was phenomenal. What I caught my eye, being a former police officer, is you'd see an incident with a cop or 2 cops trying to arrest a guy, and it's going sideways, shall we put it? And you guys come on immediately with well, here's another way. You're not saying that. You never come across arrogantly like this is a better way. You just go, here's another way, and just show it. And you did it by showing. You didn't even use words a lot of the time, which is brilliant. So kudos to what you do. What made you roll into jiu-jitsu, and what's your sort of background with law enforcement?
Yeah, so I was a cop for 11 years. I started in August of 2010. I left my job in September of 2021. So it was just a little bit over 11 years that I was a cop. And I got into jiu-jitsu kind of right around that same time when I started policing, just because I knew I kind of had an honest conversation with myself about whether or not I knew how to fight and handle myself against people that were bigger and stronger than me. Yeah. And at the time I had lifted a lot of weights and I did all that kind of stuff, and kind of walked around with my chest puffed out, and I thought I was tough, but deep down I knew I didn't know how to fight, and that I didn't really know what was going to happen if I had to deal with somebody that was bigger and stronger than me. So I knew it was time for me to, start to learn something. And that was probably about a year into my career, and I started doing research. I had no clue. Like, I knew of jiu-jitsu, but I didn't really know much about it. And I started doing research on, best martial arts for policing, best martial arts for fighting.
Yeah.
And, I would see a lot of guys posting jiu-jitsu videos, and it looked very similar to kind of the incidents and things that we were dealing with on the street when you go to arrest somebody and they tense up and try to pull away from you. So I was fortunate enough to be literally like down the street from what I think is probably one of the best jiu-jitsu gyms in the country, and one of the best instructors that I've been able to train under now for the last almost, what is it, 12 years that 11 and a half years that I've been training. And so I just stopped in there one day, and I met my coach, Damien, and it turned out that there was a ton of other, cops that train there. And it was a very law enforcement friendly gym. So it was just kind of a natural fit for me. And I signed up, I think like the next day, and I've never stopped.
Wow, wow, yeah, the jujitsu bug is really there. My wee boy, he's 7. He started his jujitsu about 4, and it's very encompassing compared to, oh, geez, I'm almost 50 years old now, and I remember doing jujitsu when I was in my probably single digit years. Not
Yeah.
jujitsu, sorry, karate, going to martial arts, and the gi, and it was so daunting, nervous, and anxious. It was hard, and you had these big guys yelling these things. But jujitsu, it's just a family around it. It's stunning, Jason, and he's got
Yeah.
more skill than I have. I'm not a skilled fighter. I just know some cool army moves.
Yeah.
But it is
Yeah, you're
very
right
interesting.
about that. Definitely,
Yeah,
like there's definitely a big community that you're surrounded with, and it's usually a very positive environment, which I think is great, especially, for cops that train and they want to get away from the job and kind of decompress. At the end of the day, when they go to work out, they don't necessarily want to like talk shop and talk about work. They just want to get a good workout in and kind of have people to talk to. And jiu-jitsu is, I think, the community is really good for that. So yeah, I agree with you.
and no posturing either. You just said about the cop who comes along wants to decompress, and then also thinking from the family side. You don't want big guys posturing around. It's just they're there to teach knowledge transfer, as DJ Shipley says, and and everybody's there to learn. It's very yeah. I think positive is definitely one adjective to use.
For
Um,
sure.
you were very That's very interesting. A year into policing, you realize even with the body armor, even with the gun, all that stuff, you realized you didn't really know how to fight. Now,
Yeah.
as I said just before we started recording, I was a cop here for a couple of years in Western Australia, came straight out of special forces into policing. Now that's a step down, and I found that so easy to step down in the threat level. Um, that came off derogatory. I hope it didn't, because once you know all you got to do is shoot someone in the head, stepping it down to talking them and cuffing them and things is a lot easier. There's a
Right.
lot less stress. So
Yeah.
I found that interesting. But I was in the police academy, we've got all range of people there from the public. And we had a little 5'2" woman, like 25 years old, to well, actually, the other one was 5'2" as well, but she was about 45 years old, housewife turned police officer. And the police commissioner, so the head of the police, his take was, it doesn't matter what size, sex, or skill you are, you've got the tools.
Hmm.
Um, accoutrements is the fancy word they use here in police. I mean, who uses that word anymore? But you got the taser and you got the bat and you got the spray. So I was just thinking then, you know, you when those guys go to tense up, the big guys, could you talk us through why it's not realistic to just disengage, pop the taser out, disengage, do this? Even in theory now, it sounds like you could, but you're in the middle of doing something and the guy tenses up. Talk us through that
Yeah.
situation realistically from a police officer's point of view, and why you may need to actually have some hand skills rather than all the stuff you got on your belt.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's something that's not addressed enough because there is a huge issue here in the US, especially with tool reliance and over reliance on those tools that we carry and that were issued.
Mm,
Honestly, the biggest thing is we obviously have to be justified in what we're doing. And we have to be able to articulate why we're using some level of force. And it has to be reasonable and it has to be necessary to fall, within our case law. And just because someone tenses up, that doesn't automatically give us the legal authority to start, teeing off on them with a baton or hitting them with the taser or spraying them with OC. We have to be able to justify that stuff. And so that's a huge piece of it. And then the other piece I would say is just that, those tools, they fail and they fail a lot. Um, Tasers, especially, in the wintertime in colder weather states, like I'm in Minnesota, people wear thick jackets and things,
yep.
thick pants. The taser is almost useless in a lot of those situations. OC has a lot of limitations. If you're spraying somebody close proximity to your partners, obviously everybody's going to get exposed to it, and no one wants to be exposed to pepper spray. If you've never been sprayed, it's awful. I'm sure you have, but for those listening that have not, it's like one of the worst experiences of all time. And so, that has its limitations. The baton, I could probably do a whole nother podcast episode on the baton and how useless I think it is and how it should just be outlawed and banned across the country. But unfortunately, a lot of police departments are just still stuck in their old school ways, and, post boards here that govern all the laws surrounding police use of force and everything. They still require most agencies to train with it. Even if you're not carrying it, you still have to train with it.
Wow.
And with the baton, it's one of those things, I think, again, under stress, if you're swinging essentially what's like a miniature baseball bat around at somebody, there's a huge potential for unnecessary injury, not only to the suspect, but also anyone else that's around. That thing can get taken away from you pretty easily and be used against you. I mean, there's just so many issues with it. Yeah. And so for those reasons, you have to have some baseline of grappling skills. And, I think there's this idea about what fights are like on the street between cops and suspects. And I think a lot of people have this idea that it's always this knockdown, drag out fight where people are throwing punches and, you're being assaulted. And 98% of the time, it's usually just a grappling match. It's usually grab onto somebody, they tense up, they're pulling away. They don't want to go to jail. They don't want to get put into handcuffs, but it's not the knockout drag down fight. It's just like you are trying to control this person and they don't want to be controlled, which is exactly what we do on the mats every single day at jiu-jitsu training. Now that stuff also will carry over to those other instances where someone is trying to attack you, because we do work punch defense and we work ways to close the distance and take people down to the ground to control them. So it's all relatable and it all has self-defense aspects to it. And I think that gets lost on a lot of people. Some people will look at jiu-jitsu that aren't familiar with it and think, oh, well, that's a sport. That's sport fighting, and that's just not the case.
Absolutely. Thank you for the pause as well there. Yeah, look, that's really interesting. You said, you're trying to control this person and they don't want to be controlled. Two things there. One, in the Western Australia Police Force, they teach what's called empty-hand tactics, empty-hand techniques, or along those lines. And it's you don't have the weapons in your hands, because really they're weapons. You're just using your hands to do things. But they never made a delineation between control and restraint and self-defense, which is a line that's crossed. One minute you're trying to put cuffs on the guy because he's done something wrong. And we say guy, but we obviously mean guys and girls. Women girls, some of the worst when they just throw their tantrum.
Oh yeah, almost impossible to control sometimes.
Oh, they're so screwy. And then when it flicks to a life and death self-defense situation, there's a line there. We might come back to that, or we will come back to it. But I never had. I was thinking about the prep for this last night. I've never thrown a punch as a cop. I had zero need to do that. My job, I never got in a life and death me against someone else situation, but I never had to throw a punch because I was just putting them in cuffs because they'd done the wrong things. And some of them were very bad people, and some of them was super quick. The one time this was an interesting situation. Well, sorry about the war story, but we're three up. So we're three police officers patrolling at night in the party district of where we are here. And one of our guys had been left behind the corner, just chatting to a member of the public, having a nice time, some social interaction. We go around the corner. We're all experienced. He can take care of himself, been a cop for like 8 years. We go around the corner like 10 meters, and then we hear this thing kick off, me and this other sergeant I was with, to go running back. And we come around, our guy's blood all over his face, pointing at a huge tall guy. That's what I remember seeing and hearing, and a melee around, like people like kind of shocked. And so I just immediately from behind, the guy didn't really see me. I just jumped on. He's like 6'2", and I'm not. I'm a wee fella. So I had to jump, choker hold him down because I had to get him down to the ground. And I was holding there. And then I'm like, listen, I don't know what's happened. you're under arrest, right? You're being detained. You're not under arrest. If it turns out it's not you, I was literally speaking of this. I'll undertain you, but don't move. If you do move, you'll be arrested. You're cuffed, but don't move. I'm holding you for your own safety. It wasn't it wasn't angry. It was a little bit aggressive to jump up, but as soon as he pulled down, but I
Yeah.
just don't see this punching thing in it. Is it from? I'm getting to my question. Do you think these people that you see on the social media and on the news, do you think it comes from a lack of training exposure, and they think it's gone from control and restraint to shit? I need to fight for my life. Do you think it's just a lack of exposure to that, or what are your thoughts, Jason?
Yeah, in almost all cases I do. I think strikes, punches, kicks are all usually done out of A, not knowing what to do because you don't have any training,
Mm,
and B, out of anger. You're
yeah,
upset that this person is not listening to you and you're getting increasingly frustrated. And so you start throwing strikes. And it's, punching is the natural human response to aggression, right? If someone's trying to attack you, we use our fists. We've learned
mm,
that from, when we were little kids.
mm,
The problem is that most cops that talk about striking and I would just punch them, they don't actually train in any type of striking. They don't know how to throw a proper punch.
yeah,
I used to teach classes where I would tell guys and gals, like, let me see you make a fist. What does that look like? And you'd be shocked at how many people didn't even know how to make like a proper fist.
yeah,
So, there's a lot out there, and I'm not anti-striking by any means. I think they have their place. I was a boxing coach for 5 years. I've competed in the ring. I love boxing. I love striking, but on the street, kind of going back to what we were talking about
yeah,
before with, legal authority and being justified in what you're doing. A lot of those instances, just because someone's tensing up and is pulling away from you, that doesn't give us the legal authority to start punching them in the face, right? And I always talk about this too with strikes and punches in particular. There's limitations with those because you can break your hands. That's a big
yes.
one,
This
especially if
this
you're not
knuckle's got
used to it.
12 pieces.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we've all probably at some point, if you've punched someone in the face or you've punched a wall out of
yeah,
anger or whatever,
yeah,
you can break your hand pretty easily, or at least injure it enough to where it's not functional. Right.
absolutely.
And that's a huge issue if you're fighting on the street, if you have to access your gun or whatever,
Yeah,
and now your hand doesn't work. So that's a big one. And then the other one is like punches have a really there's a lot of liability that comes with those. If you punch someone and they bounce their head off the pavement, or you
yeah,
punch them too hard and they have a concussion,
yeah.
they get some swelling of their brain, or like, I mean, all of that stuff can happen through strikes. So it's just something that needs to be talked about a little bit more. And I think people have to have an awareness of that rather than just saying, well, we need to train more striking and we need to, I would just punch them in the face. I think we really have to think about what that means.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
agree. I agree.
so
And in the self-defense that I teach, and I can't, that word is just a marketing word. And what I teach people to stay alive is assume that the other guy's bigger, faster, stronger, more skilled, armed, has a pre-plan. If he's bigger and you're a 5'6" or what am I, 5'7" guy, and he's 6'2", I'm not going to punch him in the face because he outweighs me.
yeah,
So
yeah,
just simple physics, F equals ma. Unless I'm like a powerlifting champion, it's not going to work so good. So
right.
yeah,
That's
it's
a good
interesting.
point. I'm your height. I'm 5'7",
Yeah,
and same thing. You're not going to box someone that has a huge height advantage on you, because that also means they have a huge reach advantage on you.
exactly.
Um, I mean, yeah, and so that's where I think grappling really comes into play for all of those reasons, especially for cops, because in the self-defense side of things, if you're dealing with somebody like that, obviously you probably teach this. If you can get away, get away. That's the
Absolutely.
that's your best chance of survival, is get out of that situation, get out of that scenario. You don't have to fight, get away. But for cops, they don't have that option, right?
Exactly.
If we can't just run away or turn and just get back in our car and leave, I guess in some in some situations we probably do. But if we have to make an arrest and the person doesn't want to go to jail and we have to fight this person who's a lot bigger and stronger than us, well, we can't box them if A, we don't know how to box, and B, if they're
Exactly.
a lot bigger than us, that's going to be really challenging.
Yeah.
But fundamental grappling tactics can absolutely help give you an advantage.
Now, I love what you've nailed there because that's where I wanted to push to fundamental grappling tactics. Maybe that's the title of the show. We'll figure it out. But I remember doing the control and restraint part, which was not stated what you're doing, but trying to do that in police. It was all wrist locks and these other things that relatively failed, rather than those grappling techniques, which they seem to be much stronger. They seem to be much more skilled, arm barring and using your whole arms. Because then you got the person who's drug affected. I'll never forget the first one I took down. He was just standing there, no problem. And I thought, I can take this guy. He's like that, and he's 6 foot, a bit taller, but no problem. I'll just put him down with an arm lock, and it took 5 of us to hold him down.
Yeah.
Not one of us laid a punch on him. One guy had one arm, one guy had another arm, one guy had one leg, one guy had one leg, one guy had a taser on his back. Didn't pull the trigger. But when they're drug affected or just so survival instinct, like you said, they don't want to go to jail. So for them, it is fight or flight. Those people are strong. Now, if you lock up a limb in the way that jiu-jitsu does, they can't move that limb. And I've seen some of the things you put out there. The difference in jiu-jitsu and the basic grappling that you're talking about versus what you sort of were taught years ago and what's still currently taught with the wrist locks and the pain compliance. Maybe talk through that.
Yeah, so the traditional police defensive tactics, at least here in the United States, what's been taught for, decades, for the most part, is complete just trash. It's garbage, right? Like you're saying, the wrist locks, the pain compliance techniques, all of this nonsense, hitting bags and yelling "get back" and expecting the person to comply. It doesn't work against an actual resisting opponent. And I think that's where there's been just we've missed the mark in police training for so long, because we teach cops these bogus techniques that we don't really pressure test. We're not actually using them against someone who's resisting us with 100% intensity.
Yeah.
So in the training environment, when we go to do these pressure techniques, usually you do them to each other, and the guy says, "Ow, oh my gosh, that hurts." And then that's the end of the training. And then we go out on the street and we deal with someone who actually wants to fight with us. And we're trying all this stuff that we learned back in the training room against our friends that we didn't actually pressure test, and now it's not working. And so what ends up happening is we have to make things up on the fly, because most cops are not trained in fighting. And then it just escalates the situation. Unnecessary and excessive force typically follows because of all the things we talked about. We start striking, kicking, punching people in the face out of panic and fear and maybe even anger. And it's not a good system. And so what I really like about, jiu-jitsu, and same with other martial arts like boxing or Muay Thai or wrestling, you can train that stuff with 100% intensity against an opponent who's trying to do the same thing to you.
Yeah.
And that's when you can really start to learn what works and what doesn't, and what is going to be effective in those situations and what's not. And to your point too about the guys that are on drugs, like the people that are high or drunk, sometimes they feel like we hear that they have superhuman strength, right? Yeah. I've heard that my whole career. I don't think that that's actually a thing. I don't think you get superhuman strength. I think the idea of that is silly. I think what's happening is when you're fighting those people on the street as a cop and you don't have any training, they feel like they have superhuman strength because they're not feeling the bullshit pain compliance techniques that you're trying on them, right?
Yeah.
Of course. So if I'm trying this pressure point technique and they're drunk or high, of course it's not going to work. So maybe I feel like they have superhuman strength, but really it's just that the stuff that you're doing to them isn't working. I know jiu-jitsu works against people that are drunk and high because I've used it. It's body mechanics, it's leverage, it's body positioning. It's all of those things that you learn through grappling against people that are fighting back. And not to say that it's easy. Fights are never easy. But there's definitely things that you can train and do to put yourself at a significant advantage in those situations versus just, learning a couple of baton strikes and pressure points against fully cooperative opponents.
Or worse still, like you said, going, "Oh shit, you didn't say that, but oh shit, this isn't working. I need to make it up." Well, we know what happens when we make it up. We'll go to that. I better write the note. But just going back to the superhuman strength, for that person that they're trying to control, was a great word, trying to lock up, that person will often do 100% of their capability, 100%. And there's no way that cop can do that because they're not fighting for their life. They're just trying to do a job, which is put
Yeah.
the cuffs on that person. So the human is amazing when they unleash 100%. I saw
Right.
a guy on drugs where this guy had assaulted 7 people before he got to him. Basically, what that means was he threw a punch near someone, maybe pushed someone, but he was in a shopping mall 7 p.m. on a Friday night. Me and my sergeant, he was a big special forces guy, ex-special forces guy too. We see him and his partner. He'd had a point of speed. So he was high earlier prior to our engagement. Anyway, they're sitting down and he sees the opportunity and he runs. And I look, this doesn't quite sound right, but he was on camera, and I measured the time and I measured the distance, and he did 90 meters in about 9 seconds.
Hmm.
It's pretty quick. He's
Yeah.
sprinting and he's gone, and I'm running fast. But my point here is, I went to take off, but I'm not running as fast as I can. I'm doing my 100%. He was. And he was gassed at 150 meters, and we caught him. But they're doing 100%, so they do seem superhuman. And that police officer that's never been exposed to that, it just wouldn't compute in their brain.
Right.
And then maybe takes us to that next part. Then they have to make it up because they're not exposed. They go, none of this stuff's working. Like you said, the baton strike. I have to make this up. Let's talk about what the hell happens when they make it up, because I know what it is, but I'd love to hear it from the expert for the listeners. When someone tries to make stuff up on the go, what are they defaulting to and what goes on?
Yeah, well, they're usually defaulting to whatever it is that maybe they learned at their 8-hour training last year at the police department, if they remember any of it. So they're defaulting to that. But I would say 9 times out of 10, they're defaulting to, oh shit, what am I supposed to do? And then they just start making things up that they don't have anything to draw from. And so it's just all improvised in the moment. And where you see this a lot, and watch any internet video of a group of cops trying to arrest somebody, everybody's making things up. So what ends up happening is we're pulling the suspect in different directions. One person's pulling the arm this way, another one's trying to drive his head over here, the other one's trying to pull a leg. You see this a lot from stand-up scenarios when we're trying to take somebody down to the ground. Usually cops end up fighting each other more than they do the suspect, because again, everyone's making things up as they're going because they don't know any takedowns. And that's a huge issue that comes with a lot, again, of potential for injury to everybody that's involved, cops and suspects. And it just it's sad to watch, because that if just through some basic consistent training, 1 day a week, if you train 1 day a week in some of the fundamental stuff, you'd be so much more prepared for those situations than just hoping that it goes your way when stuff does hit the fan. And I think that's kind of where we're at with a lot of these things. Is it won't be me, and hopefully it'll work out. And maybe I've won all my fights on the street, I'm undefeated, so it will never happen to me. But like you said, I mean, assume everybody's bigger and faster and stronger than you, and because in a lot of instances there's a lot of people out there that are bigger, faster, stronger, and you always have to you should have some level of training to deal with that if you ever encounter it.
Absolutely.
So
what I find when they're making it up, and the great example there is the mirror neurons. So if we go to physiology and that is still physiology, even though it's in the brain, you just mirroring what the other person does. So you say one person's pulling an arm, the other person is pulling a leg. It's like, it's at a playground level of fight and flight. It's a playground level of what the psychs call, you've flipped your lid, and now we're not thinking, we're going to go and react. And that reaction, if it's one-on-one, you often see the mirror neurons, the mirroring of the suspect, which is even worse. But it's goes back to the level of where are they drawing from? Are they flipping their lid? Do they still have any level of cognitive thinking? And B, if they do flip the lid, what are they defaulting to? And if all they've ever been taught was that 8 hours that for their upskill training and in the academy. And if that's failed, they're just going to default to the most gross movements, and that bigger, faster, stronger person is going to win, and not them. And those 5 cops the other day. I mean, that was amazing seeing were they 5 what's the right word? Coloured cops beat the hell out of a guy about a week or two ago, and
Oh,
then
you're talking about the Memphis incident
yeah,
in
yeah,
Memphis, Tennessee? Yeah. So the 5 officers that were involved, I think they're still like, I don't know all of the facts and the details of that particular case. There's some rumors circulating right now that maybe the officers involved in that were like one of them, his ex-girlfriend or something worked at the same place as this guy,
right,
and they thought maybe it was kind of a targeted deal that these 5 cops, beat up this dude. I mean, and that was tough to watch.
yeah,
And I think that pissed off a lot of cops and former cops like myself, because there's a lot of us out there trying to do the right thing, right? And we're trying to promote safe, effective control and defense tactics, and we're trying to move our industry, into kind of the next dimension, and like get away from all of that old stuff,
yeah.
move on, improve it, make us better. And then you have incidents like that happen, and it's just like, it feels like it sets us back. It sets us back years, so it's frustrating for sure. And I don't know if, a lot of people would argue with me about that, because I posted something on that in my social media about, to go train after that happened. Like,
Yeah,
guys need to go train.
100%.
And I wasn't saying that jujitsu is like the end all be all and it's the savior of incidents like that. That's not what I'm saying. But I do know that through jujitsu training, you're not only learning safe and effective tactics for the street, but you also learn respect. You learn how to respect your training partners and the people that you're like, quote unquote, fighting with. There's just a mutual respect that naturally happens through training, and that carries over onto the street. And I know, because I've seen it in myself, and I've seen it in my partners that I have trained. And I think that the person who trains consistently is just less likely to conduct themselves like that in those heated environments,
Yeah.
and probably more likely to step in if they see that their partners are doing that and end it. There's a lot of variables with that particular situation, but unfortunately that's not the first incident that's happened here like that.
Yeah.
And I training can help prevent that stuff. So
You nailed it. Go train. And yeah, when I saw that with your post, I immediately thought I never thought jiu-jitsu, Jason. I just went, those people are mirroring each other. They've got zero thinking. They're acting like apes. They're acting like cavemen. The amygdala flip. If we're going to be physiological, they're going back to that reptilian brain. And that said to me, they were untrained. But what you said there, Jason, respect. So you're on the mat, and if you and I were just coming in, even doing what I do, we have a level of respect, and we're not going to knock each other's block off, and we're going to learn and apply aggressively. Now, I've only just learned in the last couple of days, anger, the emotion, aggression, the action, but both of them by themselves are not inherently bad. In fact, some are really, really good. But when anger and aggression mix, or emotion and aggression mix, you said the words panic, fear, anger earlier. When they mix at work, because you're at a job, the cop is doing a job. When they mix, we've got a recipe for disaster, and that's what you were saying in a roundabout way. When you're on the mat with an opponent, with your training partner or so on, you're learning to it's a question actually, are you learning to disassociate the emotion from the actions you're trying to achieve there?
Yeah. That's a huge issue too. And another thing that comes out of training, in addition to the respect, you just learn how to be calm in chaotic situations,
Yeah.
And that's kind of a phrase I like to use a lot, is just calm. Learn to be calm in the chaos. Learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable, all that kind of stuff. And you only learn that by putting yourself in situations that you don't want to be in.
Yeah.
And they are uncomfortable sometimes, but it definitely carries over. I noticed it when I worked the street. It was, versus when I didn't train jujitsu versus when I did. And I would have been a different cop. I would have been a different person had I not started training, when I did. So yeah, it all carries over. And I wish more people would see that. But unfortunately, the only way to really understand it, is to go do it.
Yeah.
Like anything, is just to go try a class, go try a week's worth of classes, and then really start to understand all of these benefits that you can get out of it
Yeah.
versus, guys like me just telling you to go train or telling you how cool jujitsu is. Cause a lot of times it just falls on deaf ears. Um, so I think cops just need to go and just try it. They got nothing to lose. You can try a class. It will take an hour out of your day. And, then you can tell me to go pound sand or whatever. If it's as worthless as you thought it was going to be.
It just wasn't Japanese wrestling, and I use that term. I hope that is roughly what jiu-jitsu is, and I know there's probably a lot more. It just wasn't around when I was a kid. We had karate and judo. Boxing was an underground thing, and I just wish I was exposed to it because my boy, we've been talking a lot about police, but my when he was 4 years old, 5 years old, then he goes to school. A confrontation isn't a thing. Like if someone puts hands on him in the jiu-jitsu dojo, he loses. There's no tears. It's high five. He wins. It's high five. It's a bit of a smile, but it was just a thing, just like he's going to kick a ball. And I wish I had that when I was a kid because I would have uh, had about 8 years not being scared at school.
Mm-hmm.
What a cool
Yeah.
thing for a child to learn as well. They learn that confrontation isn't scary. It's just another thing to do.
Yep. That's a huge benefit. I'm a big proponent of getting your kids involved in either jujitsu or wrestling or some type of martial art because
Mm,
again, yeah, they're in that environment. They
yeah,
learn respect. They learn how to respect their training partners. They learn communication skills. They learn how
yeah,
to take instruction from their teacher. So yeah, it's all good stuff.
yeah. And I guess I, I said before we started recording, it's great to know someone organically, and that's where my questions come from. Not normally pre-prepared, but the same thing happens. I'm thinking about the female that police academy person that's never been exposed, or the younger male that's never been exposed. Um, Same thing. It's going to give them confidence when they go to on the job with a bad guy. Well, it's not such a scary thing. That brings me to the next evolution that you touched on sort of 10 minutes ago. Um, what is, I mean, I love the name Jiu Jitsu 50. Are you guys looking at training other professionals? What is Jiu Jitsu 50 doing? And where would you like to see, it's a two-part question, where would you like to see Jiu Jitsu fit into a police officer training program?
Yeah, so I started it as a training company that I wanted to promote sort of the jujitsu lifestyle to cops because I knew all the benefits that I got from it, and I knew that there are a lot of cops like me that could probably benefit from not only the control and defense stuff for the street, but also the physical and mental health benefits that it offers. And so I really wanted to kind of share my experience and my knowledge with anyone else who wanted to listen in my industry because I knew that industry. I did it for over a decade and I knew it just had a lot of value. And now that my business, excuse me, has been growing and I'm kind of starting to branch out a little bit more because at the end of the day, there's only going to be so many cops that want to train jujitsu and are going to be into it. And I will always promote it for policing. I'll always do, police agency training for departments that want to work with me. And
Yeah.
that's obviously a big part of my business, but I definitely would like to branch out, for anyone else that's interested in learning fundamental jujitsu skills for the street. So self-defense, if you're a self-defense enthusiast or you are, to your point, like female that just wants to learn basic self-defense, I'd like to do more of that. And really just share kind of all of my knowledge as a jiu-jitsu black belt, as a former boxer, and as a police officer that's been involved in a lot of, street fights and crazy things. just share my knowledge and experience, and hopefully that I can help make those people better and more confident, in all of those things. So there's, there's a lot of people out there I know that probably follow me that aren't cops, and I'd love to talk to them more and help them out in any way that I can. But I really enjoy teaching cops because obviously, like, I was one. I speak their language. I understand their sense of humor, all of that kind of stuff. I like being around cops. They're my people, so I'll always be there for them. But definitely looking to branch out as I kind of grow and expand my business and stuff.
And I guess to the second part, which you answered a little bit, widening up to USA or police in general through the world, where do you see jiu-jitsu? Sorry, where would you like to see jiu-jitsu fit into education for police officers? I think I'll leave that question.
Yeah. I would like to see it as sort of a mandated part of their training. So we're mandated to train with the taser. We're mandated to train with the baton. We're mandated to train, with pepper spray. Why not mandate us to train some level of fundamental jiu-jitsu? And I think that if we could get that in place, that would be a huge win, because I'm realistic. Not every cop is going to be a jiu-jitsu black belt. Not every cop is going to go train jiu-jitsu 4 or 5 days a week on their own time. I totally get that. But I do think if you could make it a part of every agency's kind of core empty hands curriculum, or like you said, because we call it empty hand techniques as well. If we could just make jiu-jitsu as part of that core curriculum, we'd be off to a really, really good start. And I think a lot of the stuff we're seeing now, we'll see a lot less of it. I don't know that there'll ever be a time when police use of force is a perfect system, because violence is never, it's never perfect. It's never going to look good. Right. But jiu-jitsu obviously is a lot more boring to watch than a lot of this other stuff that we teach and see. So I just think that's ideally for, in the law enforcement world, even across the country or across the world, not just in the US, but if we can make it a part of our, kind of the foundation of our empty hands training, that would be great.
I'd love to see that. Now, this is I'm not even a beginner. I'm an untrained person in jiu-jitsu. When I teach, well, the how not to die stuff now, but when I teach somebody some of the military and police stuff I've learned, I try and teach them as little as possible, because when they flip that amygdala, they don't want to file through 10 things. They want to file back to one thing that's going to work pretty well. You're a jiu-jitsu, 10 years, I think, if I did the maths from you being a cop for 11. Oh, no, it'd be 13 years now, would it?
Yeah, so I've been out of policing for a little over a year and some change now. And I started training in April of 2011, I think, is when I took my first jiu-jitsu class. So
nice.
12, what is that? Almost 12 years?
Yeah.
I think this April will be 12 years.
So it's a lot of time spent, and a lot of things. And literally, my 7-year-old knows way more jiu-jitsu moves than I could possibly remember. But going back to the simple thing, though, putting it into the curriculum, they don't have to learn a ton of things. Am I right in saying there's a couple of things that be pretty good for just about most arresting situations that's going to stand them in much better stead, that are relatively simple to learn?
Yeah, I think they could focus on a few specific takedowns from different positions. So if you're behind a suspect, facing a suspect, off to the side, you could work a few basic takedowns.
Yeah.
And then get really good at the basic ground control position. So mount, side control, knee on belly or knee on hips, depending on department policy. And even back mount or back control. I think that has a lot of value on the street as well. And so just getting good at that stuff, how to take someone to the ground, how to establish a dominant position to pin them, let them gas themselves out. And then probably next to that would be just like basic Kimura arm locks, because that's a natural handcuffing tactic. And I show a lot of that stuff in my videos and my mobile app and stuff. So just basic stuff. You don't need to be a jiu-jitsu black belt. Again, you don't got to go train 4 or 5 days a week, but there definitely are things that you can learn that are going to help you out a lot in those instances.
Perfect. Look, from an untrained person, that's exactly what I see. A couple of Kimura arm locks, like I saw in your first ever video, and a simple takedown from those different positions, and it's dynamic. So you must learn those different attitudes of where you are in the person. But I 100% agree with you. And I'm not a jiu-jitsu guy. I've had real world experience like you have. I think a lot of people would do really well with it. You
Yeah.
mentioned the app, which is great. And like I said originally, when I did the intro, we do the show notes so people have listened. But at this stage, where's the best place for people to find out more about you, and what do you have available?
Yeah, so you can find me on social media. I'm pretty much on every channel, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. I also have a website, jujitsu50.com. It's spelled out Fiveo, letter O, not zero, 50.com. And then, yeah, in the App Store, if you are, again, cop, self-defense enthusiast, private security guard, whatever, you're just looking to learn realistic control and defense tactics for the street, and also maybe want to learn how to like get in fight shape and stay in fight shape, we have all of that available to you through our mobile app that's available for Apple and Android.
Wow.
That comes with personal coaching from me. So any member can reach out to me directly through the app, and I can put together a custom jiu-jitsu training plan. I have a strength and conditioning coach that works for me, that can put together custom workout plans and things like that too. So it's all available. It's affordable. It's $30 a month. Or you can buy an annual membership to it. But again, my goal is to make training more accessible, and I knew that was one way to do it. And it's been going really well. There's a lot of people that use it, find value in it, and I'm
Yep.
looking to grow that side of my business as well, and really help out anybody that wants to learn.
Awesome. And you showed that so much, sharing your knowledge and experience. Literally a quote from you before. Every SF guy I've interviewed at any level, and we're talking tier one, the same thing. They just want to share their knowledge and experience. I'll never forget, actually, Dan Cooper, 18 years Australian Special Air Service, and he's more closer to my age now. And he's like, 10 years ago, he wouldn't have done that. It's like, I'll hold on to my information to get the advantage. But now I'm a little bit more mature, just wants to share it, because it's, why not get it out to everybody, all the good people out there, to help others, which is great. It shows through what you do. On the jiu-jitsu side, Michael Donvito's show did publish a couple of weeks ago. I think he's got 10 black belts, and he's a fifth.
Nice.
Yeah, amazing. A fifth degree jiu-jitsu. But what amazes me, the similarities between him and you. He's got black belts and all these things. He defaults to jiu-jitsu. You've been on the street and you box for 5 years. You're in the ring. You default to jiu-jitsu. I think is the most effective. It's not like when we were kids going, "This is the best." It's the most effective for the situation of what you're trying to achieve. Both you do that.
Right.
We haven't even talked. So I think it does show it does show the use, especially in this context, law enforcement and basic self-defense versus all the other things out there. Yeah.
Well, and to that point, we have to prioritize our training, especially as cops, because we don't have an unlimited amount of time to train everything. And if you try to train everything, you end up being kind of a jack of all trades and master of none, right?
Yeah.
That old saying. And so if we look at what is a priority, I believe that grappling, fundamental jiu-jitsu is the priority. That's what you should be really good at. And then if you have time to train a little bit of striking, Muay Thai, some basic wrestling could go a long way too. Those things are awesome. But if you don't, like most cops specifically, they work long shifts. I work 12-hour shifts. I did a 4-on, 4-off schedule. So the days that I was off, it was usually catching up on all my, dad and husband responsibilities and household chores. The days I worked, I had no time to do anything, because of those 12-hour days, when you account for drive time and then you get held over for overtime for some call, which was almost always like you're working these 14, 15-hour days, and training was out of the question on most of them, and then in your off days, you're lucky to maybe get a couple days in. So just, you have to prioritize it a little bit and focus on the things that are going to give you the most bang for your buck.
You nailed it there. Thank you for bringing that up. same as special forces. You know, we are a jack of a lot of trades, and then maybe you become a master. If you're in for 20 years, maybe you're a sniper, and that's your thing, bullets and long guns, which isn't mine. Mine's
Yeah.
explosives and all that fun stuff. Um, but we call it CQB, close quarter battle. But basically, our not using firearms, so we use everything else. Course is like 1 week long, and we probably hardly ever advise that because uh, we need to train a lot more on the other things. We need to train on the kill house, all that stuff. But what we learn in that week, we have to learn what works effectively in a short period of time, and keeping it simple. As an example, for us, if we're doing a hostage rescue and that gun fails and that gun fails, we're just kicking and striking immediately to disable the threat so the other person can live, which is completely different than a police officer's job is to, you nailed it, control that person that doesn't want to be controlled. Two completely different things. And yes, you're so right. As a police officer, you're so busy that you need those simple things that you're bringing. One last question I've got for you, kind of a fun one to finish on, is 50, a Kiwi living in Australia. It's such a cool thing. Where does the 50 come from with police? I never knew. I've seen it on TV.
Yeah. Well, so it's a very it's an old school slang term for cops. I
Yep.
don't know actually exactly where it came from. There's some different ideas. Obviously, there was the show Hawaii Five O
Oh, yeah, yeah.
back in the day. Back I was like a kid when that came out in the 80s, but yeah, I don't know if like specifically where it came from, but it's always been a slang term for as long as I can remember for
Yeah.
cops, and it's still used to this day, maybe not as much as like other street terms for cops and stuff, but 50 is probably the most recognizable because it's been around for so long. And so that's kind of where the name came from, Jiu-Jitsu 50.
It's cool, man. It's not derogatory. It's fun. Oh, I associate the fun like Magnum PI sort of years as well.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it,
That was really my goal with it. I wanted a name that, says exactly what it is. And so
yeah.
you didn't have to think about what my company does or, we teach jujitsu to cops, and now kind of expanding on that. But I think the 50 aspect, like I said, cops will always be sort of my sweet spot. Those are the people I really enjoy teaching. So I'll always have that as part of my business, no matter where I take it from here.
Well, look, it's been great chatting. It's great to see your success. An app, and the person with the app is really up there with business, and it's amazing to see where you're at, considering you've only just got out of policing, really. Um, Congratulations for what you do, and thank you for what you do out there. And yeah, it's just been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I'm sure a lot of people get out of this show, and yeah, I have, and continue to get out of what you put on the socials. So, Jason, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you for having me again. I appreciate it. This was fun.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, I'll hit pause. We'll have a chat. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hi, thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former Special Forces operator, and check out my new project for 2023 at hownottodie.com.au, where I've combined all my Special Forces training and police officer experience to help others. Thanks for watching.